All objections, other than to the form of the question, are preserved in Kentucky on video. What is your current role at Purdue?
Excuse me, there are a number of defendants that bear some portion of the Purdue name, and the distinction can be significant. So I'd ask when you phrase your questions, specify which Purdue entity you are talking about.
Well, let's talk about the number of Purdue entities there are.
Expand their marketing into family practices and general
I've seen
practices.
upwards of 69 different corporations, perhaps, that the Sackler family owns. Is that correct?
To be able to get coverage into those.
If you've counted them, I can't differ with you. I don't know the answer.
That was tough because
there are a number
in
of
retrospect,
Purdue
you wonder if
entities.
a family doctor should really even be prescribing.
The Purdue Frederick Company, Inc. Does it still exist?
Family practice and ask the doctor to start a patient on 10 milligrams. Everything else that they had
yes,
been on
sir.
Tell me what companies that you currently
There's been elaborate schemes. We've uncovered telephone schemes. People can act like doctors and nurses on the phone very easily.
You sit on the board.
The addicts are very familiar with the DEA control numbers of the doctors.
Not to my knowledge.
Something like, let's say,
What about
Forging prescriptions, stealing prescription gas. They can't get the doctor to
Sit
write
on
one. They will actually
had apprehension of
random doctors on
Introducing Ventora, the first and only buccal tank that utilizes effervescence to improve the rate and extent of fentanyl absorption.
It's a name that is attached to many different.
You love doing pharmaceutical sales. There's no better time for me to engage with one product. Ventora is a remarkable drug.
You don't use Narcan here
their number one choice.
unless the law changes it. And the reason is that we believe, I do, that that's a paramedic or life support physician. They need to do that. People say, how dare you not use Narcan? You can cause somebody to die. I didn't cause them to die. These people, when we get there, they don't like it. They don't want that. And when my people are down on one knee or both knees administering Narcan, they don't have to take something upside the head. These people try, they're very angry that you're in their house, they come up violent. There'll be people say, no.
When I started taking oxycodone 2 months ago, it was the first time I had felt normal since my original injury 10 years ago. All that time I had suffered greater or lesser extent of pain, and now I feel absolutely normal. It's wonderful to be able to get out in my
number of doctors or pharmacies that are not allowed to service this group, or is there another?
Are you still the director of Purdue Pharmacy?
What is that? What do you mean?
Are you still a general partner?
Most people, when they hear that, think, my God, you must just lay around in bed all day, you're really zoned out, you can't do anything, you can't function. But it's not like that at all. Instead, I've become a more active and productive person. I handle finances in our house. I organize all of our trips. I do all the shopping.
Did you start to think?
This is a affidavit file.
I even do our taxes. And you got to have a fairly clear head to do that. So, this medication is not turning me into a zombie. It is turning me into an active person.
I had a couple of brothers in my territory that were robbed at gunpoint, and the robber had come in and specifically asked for Oxycontin.
I look completely different. I feel different. Life is wonderful again. I have found life again.
There are people who say that Purdue not only contributed to the opioid epidemic, but they, in fact, credit Purdue Pharma with starting it. How do you feel about that?
I think they definitely contributed to it. In retrospect now, I think that they were much more aware of what was going on. I think they knew that they were mismarketing it, and they continue to do so anyway because it really was all about profit.
supervisory level, not as an active level, for a period of time that began with the launching of OxyContin and ended in early 2003.
When you were involved on the supervisory level but not the active level, how much of your day-to-day activity was devoted to OxyContin?
It varied enormously.
In this declaration, it says, during the time period set forth in the amended complaint, 1996 to 2009, I was not directly involved with the day-to-day marketing or promotion of OxyContin, the training or management of Purdue sales representative, or the scientific research into the conversion ratio from MS Contin to OxyContin. Those responsibilities principally fell to Purdue senior management in research and development, regulatory affairs, sales training and marketing, among others. Is that accurate?
Yes.
I want to show you an email, Dr. Sackler, dated Monday, May 31st, 1999. Do you know who Dr. Cornelia Hinch is?
I do.
And who is that?
She was general manager of Mundipharma Australia.
Okay. And to give this a little bit of context, you all had a drug called MS Contin, a morphine sulfate that was an immediate release narcotic opioid, or narcotic, is that correct?
It was controlled release.
Controlled release, I'm sorry. And that was used primarily for cancer patients or malignant pain patients, is that correct?
Majority of use, yes, but not, I don't think primarily conveys an accurate picture.
Okay. Majority of use was for?
Over 50%.
And it was sort of felt by Purdue Pharma that morphine had a stigma attached to it that kept doctors from prescribing it across the board. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And you all had a...
May I amend that?
Yes.
It didn't prevent doctors from prescribing it across the board. It was an inhibition to the use of the product in every application.
Okay. Have you ever gone back and studied the history of addiction and how it has played out in the 19th and 20th century?
I'm not a student of that literature.
What was your understanding of why doctors did not want to prescribe morphine for anything or had a stigma about prescribing it for anything other than cancer and malignant pain?
As I said before, the stigma prevented many physicians from prescribing it for any pain.
Why do you think that stigma existed?
I'm not a student of the issue, but I believe the stigma existed because of a popular understanding shared by both professionals and by laymen that morphine was an end-of-life drug, if it was to be used at all.
Were there concerns about addiction and dependence with respect to morphine?
Some people had those concerns.
So, going back to building our context here, you all had a drug called MS Contin that you had the exclusive right to sell. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you know when that exclusivity was set to expire?
I'm not certain that I know the date, no.
Do you recall that one of the concerns that Purdue's senior management have. I'm using Purdue in relation to Purdue companies that are involved with OxyContin. And rather than just sit here and name them all out, can we agree that when I say Purdue, I'm referring to Purdue companies involved with
Mr. Thompson,
OxyContin?
I have to object to that because I said at the outset there are different Purdue entities that are defendants in the case, and the distinction between them may at times be significant. And so if you lump them all together under Purdue, we're going to get a record that will not be easily decipherable at the end.
Well, let's talk about it then. Which Purdue companies were involved in the sale and distribution of OxyContin?
Both Purdue Frederick and Purdue Pharma were involved in the early years of selling the product.
Okay. Were there any other Purdue companies involved in the selling of the product?
Not in the U.S.
Who had the exclusive right to sell MS Contin?
At first, it was Purdue Frederick. I don't know at what point Purdue Pharma acquired rights to sell it, or if it did at all.
What is the distinction between Purdue Frederick and Purdue Pharma?
Purdue Frederick was the original company that my father and uncle acquired in 1952. It was a shell company, and it was the first pharmaceutical company that they owned. Purdue Pharma was established in the early 1990s to take on new products and to also take on the risk of, take on the risk of new products and also a few established products, but not all.
Were there any actions taken with respect to Purdue or with respect to OxyContin that would not fall under the Purdue Pharma umbrella?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Are you maintaining that there are any actions done with respect to OxyContin, its creation, production, marketing, sales, that do not fall under the Purdue Pharma umbrella?
Its creation was done in Purdue Frederick.
Okay.
Until the early 90s, when that responsibility was transferred to Purdue Pharma.
Okay. And then Purdue Frederick continued to exist, though, correct?
It did.
Okay. And was Purdue Frederick also a company involved with marketing, promoting, sales, and production of OxyContin?
I'm trying to give you an accurate answer because this is confusing and complex. There was a period of time in which, once Purdue Pharma became involved, that Purdue Frederick was involved. But Purdue Frederick was never involved, nor Purdue Pharma, in manufacturing the drug, which was, when it was developed, was manufactured by a company named PF Laboratories.
Okay. Other than the manufacture, did Purdue Frederick and Purdue Pharma both play a role in the
I can't
production?
Recall in detail whether they both played a role or whether when Purdue Pharma took on the project, it carried most of the weight.
Okay. Is there
all of it.
Is there any difference between the employees of Purdue Frederick and Purdue Pharma?
There were differences.
Okay. Any difference in the board of directors?
That would test my memory, and I'm not sure.
All right. Well, let me go back to, let's talk about OxyContin. And I'm going to use the term Purdue for both Purdue Frederick and Purdue Pharma. If at some point you feel like there's a distinction to be made, you let me know, okay? But at a time when...
Mr. Thompson, I object to your combining the two under the name Purdue. If you're going to do it, then I'd like to have a standing objection to that combination.
What is your reason for the objection?
My reason is, as Dr. Sackler has explained briefly, there were two entities that did different things at different times. And if you lump the two together, inevitably there's going to be confusion in terms of the witness's answer.
Okay. Let's do this. I'm going to refer to Purdue as Purdue Pharma LP, and also Purdue Frederick LP. If at some point you feel like it's only Purdue Frederick or only Purdue Pharma, you let me know, okay?
It's kind of a burden, but with the help of my attorney.
Sure. So let's
because
talk.
There may be issues. It's going to be. It tests my memory to separate the two. So I'm sorry for the confusion, but it is important.
For instance, let me ask you this, sales reps. Were sales reps employed by Purdue Frederick or Purdue Pharma?
For a period of time, they were each sales rep was employed by one, but not necessarily the other.
Do you know which sales reps were employed by Purdue Frederick versus Purdue Pharma?
I don't know.
Do you know if they received different training?
I believe the training was the same.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to refer to, when I say Purdue, as Purdue Frederick. If you feel like it's Purdue Pharma, you let me know, okay?
Okay.
All right. So back in early 90s, when you're developing MS Contin, this exclusive license that you had to sell MS Contin was going to expire, and there was going to be competition from generic companies, correct?
Well, the product, MS Contin, was developed in the late 70s and early 80s. And so are you discussing development or are you discussing a later time?
The later time when its license is about to expire.
Eventually, we knew that there would be competition for MS Contin.
And one of the things that, in developing oxycodone controlled release, one of the concerns was how to position it in the market, and whether you were going to position it an obsolete MS Contin or try to position it alongside MS Contin. Do you recall that issue?
I object to the form of the question. Could you repeat it? I'm not sure I understood.
Yes. One of the concerns when you were developing oxycodone, OxyContin controlled release, was how you were going to position it for market share, and whether you were going to position it and make MS Contin obsolete and take that market share that MS Contin had, or whether you were going to position it alongside MS Contin and sell them both together. Do you recall that concern?
I recall discussions, but that wasn't the principal driver. The principal goal was to produce the best product we could, and we believed when we started it, and subsequently. Should I stop?
No, that's...
We believed it was and is a better product than MS Contin.
Okay. Here's a memo dated to Richard S. Sackler from Robert Kaiko. Do you know Dr. Kaiko?
I do.
He's a PhD.
He is.
What was his role?
He was the person who undertook or ran the project and was involved in the project of developing OxyContin, and was, as a clinical pharmacologist, was deeply involved in selecting formulations that would be most likely to achieve the desired effect.
Okay. And under here it says rationale for another controlled release opioid analgesic. This is Bates number. It's actually got 2 Bates stamps, so it's PDD 9520805292. But it says rationale for another controlled release opioid analgesic. MS Contin may eventually face such serious generic competition that other controlled release opioids must be considered. Other pharmaceutical firms are thought to also be developing other controlled release opioid analgesics.
Mr. Thompson, if you're reading from a document, could you show it to the witness?
Sure. That's why I was holding it over here in front.
It's hard to read from that distance.
Got an extra copy? Yeah. Great. Just always hand me.
You have a copy for me, Wilson? Thank you.
So, do you see down there the second highlighted portion that says rationale?
No, mine is not highlighted. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you where to go.
Okay.
So